So here's throwing a mug. I'm doing these out of order, so this is kind of the last video, but it's also the first step in the process. Got some gloves on because I have some eczema on my hands, and it helps if I keep them dry. So something that I just learned to work with in the last couple years. But so this is my electric pottery wheel, and it's got an electric motor, and there's a gear shift here. I'm standing up, so this is waist height, a little below waist height. That's something I learned from my mentor, and it's a lot easier on my back. I've weighed out a bunch of balls of clay and wedged them thoroughly so that they're uniform in density. And this is a little over a pound, about a pound. My scale is not super accurate, so it's close enough. But this is a plaster bat on the wheel head. Plaster is good because it absorbs water, so it means that it's sticky to clay, but also releases it when it dries. In this case, I'm going to be cutting off the mug with wire. It's actually a piece of fishing line, and picking it up with some helpers that I'll be able to get underneath it and pick it up and put it on my board over here. So first thing I'll do is put a little water down. It'll help with the sticking, and throw my mass of clay down. Put a little water on the clay, and this first part is centering. So that is getting the mass of clay more or less in the center of the wheel head or the bat. And that's good. It's nice and centered. I'll move the speed up a little bit and start making a depression in the middle. And then I'm going to start pulling my finger across the bottom to create the bottom, and I'm trying to do it in an even fashion so that the bottom will be nice and flat. I'm going back and forth across it to compress the clay. Compressing clay makes it stronger and aligns the clay particles. And then now I'm pulling it. So between my index finger and my index finger on the other side, on the inside, I'm squeezing the clay and creating a ridge. And then by pulling that ridge up, I can cause that expansion to travel up the side of the clay wall and move its way to the top. It usually takes 3 or 4 pulls to get the right height. I'm feeling a few air bubbles in there. That's not unusual, and it's not something that is a problem. It just can be uncomfortable, and I'm just going to use a needle tool to deflate those, and then in my next pass those will get compressed and collapse. I'm reaching down to the bottom again, pushing out, grabbing the clay and pulling up. That seems like a good shape and size to me for this. Next, use a tool called a rib, primarily because they can be made from bone. Most of the time nowadays they're made from plastics or wood. This is a wooden rib that I made myself. It's a thin, relatively thin piece of wood. The hole in the center helps me hold on to it, and right now I'm going to be using it to compress and smooth the sides of the mug as I pull it up. I'm not necessarily trying to get rid of all of the throwing marks, but I'm just creating a smoother side, something that's more uniform, less lumpy. I still got a little bit of a blood there. I can deal with that later though. And the next step is to, I can do this, I'll probably end up doing this more than once, but this is compressing the rib. So this is a little bit of chamois leather that is wetted, and by running it across the top edge I can compress and smooth the lip so that it's even. I've got another handmade wooden tool here that is cupped in shape, and that's how I make the bands. So down here at the bottom I'll just press it against the side, and it will scrape and also compress the clay into that band shape. I'll clean it off here on my sponge. Now up above here, I'm going to make another band, but this band, because there's not anything behind it, down here there's a bunch of clay behind it so that it gives it some back pressure. Up here, I need to define the area that I'm going to do it in first. So I use the side of the tool to make 2 lines, and then I'll come back and use the tool to actually make the compression. And there's a little bit of, that looks a little better. And I'm going to roll the top edge in just a little bit. I think that looks more like a classical tankard that way to my eye. One of the signifying parts of it. And I have to get my sponge here on a stick. This is a long stick with a sponge at the end of it. It might take a second for it to rehydrate because it was rock hard. I'm going to use that to take out the little bit of water that's in the bottom of the mug, because if I leave that in there, the bottom will remain wet while the top dries, and that'll cause the bottom to crack quite badly. And now I'm going to cut it off. So using this piece of line, which you probably can't see very well, I'm holding onto the handles at the end, pulling it very taut, and then while the wheel spins around, I pull it across the bottom. And now it's mostly free. There's a little bit of moisture sticking them together, but with these lifters I can get just under the edge, and if I pop it up, it comes off. And I move it over to my board. I've got a 4.5 inch wide board over here, and you put all of my wear on. It's about this long. It's just outside of the camera shot. I should be able to get 11 pieces on there, and then they'll move on to trimming and putting handles on. So let's throw in a mug.